Welcome to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. I'm your host, Jessie Sage.
Put away the lingerie. I want to know you. Tell me more. I don't care about the news. I want to hear about you and see the world from your point of view. The coffee's already made, so I'll part the shades, just pull up a chair and tell me more.
When We're Not Hustling is a weekly podcast that explores the lives and identities of sex workers outside of our work personas, our personal philosophies, ambitions, families, relationships, passions, spirituality, and so much more. We talk about our lives beyond the job, asking, what does the flexibility of sex work allow us to do, and who does it allow us to be? On this show, we learn who sex workers are outside of the work we're known for. When We're Not Hustling is an exploration of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is brought to you by Assembly 4. Assembly 4 is a collective of sex workers and technologists working to bring the overall cost of sex work down through their advertising platform, Tryst.link. They also educate clients through the Good Client Guide and provide resources and articles written by and for sex workers. Assembly 4 caters to all genders and demographics and raises funds to fight for sex worker rights and against exploitation in the sex industry. Learn more at assembly4.com. ASSEMBLYFOUR.com. Welcome back to another episode of When We're Not Hustling. This is Jessie Sage. This is lucky episode number 13. You know, what's funny is that right as I said that, as it was coming out of my mouth, I was thinking about the fact that my grandfather, who was born in the United States, but his older brothers and sisters were born in Italy. And I think one was born on the boat, as they say, coming over here. He was number 13, lucky number 13 of his siblings. I think there was 20 of them, and his mom died like in her early 40s of old age, which, you know, I guess if you have 20 children, that happens. But he had tattooed on his forearm, and I always remember paying attention to this as a child, the number 13 and a black cat like woven around it. So that has nothing to do with Ramona Flour or this episode, but right as I said lucky number 13, I thought about that. Anyways, this is episode 13. We have an amazing guest today, Ramona Flour, who has been a friend of mine for a long time. We have met at many conventions across the country. We have met for dinner in New York. We have worked together. We have taken pictures together. I really love Ramona, so I'm really glad that she is on the show today. When I asked her what she wanted to talk about, because usually when I ask guests to come on, I ask them what they want to talk about, because I'm trying to get to whatever is the most interesting topic for sex workers. She said that she would talk about collecting clowns, and I had no idea where that was going to go, but I want to hear about Ramona's clowns. Like, that sounds great. So we started talking about that, and it was really a very deep and interesting conversation about joy and about hanging on to joy as an act of resistance, as something that heals us, and silliness, and connecting with like the silliness that we have inside of us that somehow we squash down by life. That's what's happened to me. And it really did, as I listened to her talk, remind me of the things that I am not paying as much attention to in my life that I really would love to pay attention to. So this is a delightful interview. I am really grateful to Ramona for reminding me to do that. Also, I think this is a good opportunity to remind you, as sex workers who listen to the show, that we want to talk to you about anything that you're interested in the things that bring you joy, in the things that you're interested in even your aspirations, things that you want to do, whatever it is that you want to talk about. So please reach out to me if you want to come on the show, if you're a sex worker and you want to talk about anything that's not sex work. You can reach out at nothustlingpod@proton.me. So in order to introduce Ramona, I want to let you know that Ramona is a second-generation sex worker living and working in New York City with a focus on live webcam, content creation, and dynamic long-term connections fostered with her longtime clients. When she isn't traveling for work, she is treasure hunting antiques and art all over the East Coast, tending to her cats and houseplants, and deciding what her next meal is. In her free time, she enjoys film photography, collecting 1930s to 1980s vintage erotica print media, and hunting down clown trinkets and art, interior design, literature primarily with a focus on history, theology, and nonfiction, fashion and beauty with a focus on skincare, and hiking upstate when the weather allows it. So welcome, Ramona, and I can't wait to share this interview with you. Hi, Ramona. It's so good to have you here today.
Hi, Jessie. Nice to see you.
I know. I'm going to be up in New York in April. We should get together then.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm down. It's been too long.
Oh, but you're not living there anymore. You still go there fairly often though, huh?
Yeah, I'm back in the city. I just live in a different borough now. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. For some reason I thought you were, so you're back. That's nice. How have you been?
I've been good. I can't complain. We had our first spring day the other day. So it feels like we're finally done with the winter. I'm very excited. I need some vitamin D.
I know. I felt like that yesterday too. I was working on an article and I opened the window and sat under the window and was like, oh my gosh, this is a million times better. I love that. When you sit inside in the winter all summer or all winter, it's terrible.
Yeah.
So I am always happy to talk to you, but I had you on today to talk about some of your hobbies. And one of them that you said, your cat is so cute, by the way. One of them that you told me about was clown collecting. And I actually don't know what you mean by that. So I want to hear all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of got into clowns roundabout as a kid. One of my uncles, his best friend, was a professional clown. So he would always come to our birthday parties when I was a kid.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I just got obsessed with clown stuff then. So it's been a progression throughout my life. But I've always been into collecting art and antiques. And in the last few years, I got really serious about collecting clowns. So I call it clown hunting.
That's
and
fun. All kinds of clowns, from different.
Yeah. So I really like porcelain clowns, clown masks, clown dolls, clown art. Sometimes you'll find old sideshow carnival posters, things like that with clowns on them. Italians really like to collect the porcelain clown masks from Mardi Gras.
Oh,
so I got into collecting clown masks.
Because you have Italian people in your family, huh?
Yeah. So my mom's side of the family is Sicilian. So it's definitely, I don't know. I think we definitely had some in the house growing up. And then it has now snowballed to where everyone knows that I collect clowns. So I have I have random internet friends that I've never met in real life that will send me clowns because they're at a yard sale or a Salvation Army or they're cleaning out a closet and they find a clown and they're like, oh, I have to rehome this clown and Ramona will take it for me. So now
you have a PO box specifically for clowns. You're like, this is my clown PO box.
Yeah, so I have clowns coming from all over the world now to my rescue center.
That's so actually really cool that it's become a community thing almost.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it nice. If you are a themed person or you collect a certain thing, I think for people that are interested in giving you a gift, they know what you're into. It kind of makes it easy. And I definitely feel I have friends that they look for them. They're keeping an eye open out in the wild for them. So it's snowballed. I think the last time I counted, I had 300 of them. So I have a lot of clowns.
Do you have a lot of them hung on your walls or what do you do with them?
Yeah, all over my walls. I have a dedicated clown display case for them all because I have cats and my cats kind of climb on things. And I don't know, I joke that my one cat has very extensive taste because she does loves to knock over a fragile, delicate thing. So they're all protected in my clown case under lock and key to keep them safe. But all over the walls, my guest bedroom in my house is all clown decorated. So if you stay at my house, you have to like clowns if you're going to be in the guest bedroom because you walk in and there's like 300 clowns staring at you, which is juicy.
that actually brings up an interesting point, which is that like a lot of people, and I don't actually know why, and I was wondering if you have any thoughts about this, are afraid of clowns. And I don't know what they're afraid of, but that seems like a fairly common phobia.
Yeah, I think that it's like, I mean, I think that there's a genre of like horror, scary, spooky clowns. I don't really collect like the horror clowns. Like all of my clowns are like what they consider working clowns. So clowns that are in circus outfits or have like jobs, and not so much like scary, creepy, scared clowns.
Yeah.
I think that there is like a phobia though of like masks in general. I think that like if you see somebody in a mask and their face isn't revealed, that's sort of like triggers some sort of like inherent fear. Like of the unknown, or
Yeah.
So
My
I think
dog
that it
was
might be
afraid
that.
of mannequins for that reason when she was little. Like when she was a little kid, I couldn't take her into a store because the mannequins, because their heads were cut off, just totally freaked her out.
Yeah, or like if you've ever seen like kids at theme parks, like the mascot costumes, that kind of things. I mean, I think it's kind of creepy. So
Yeah.
I get that. I had one friend that couldn't stay in my guest bedroom because they basically said like it's not the clowns that scare me, it's that there's like 300 faces staring at me.
Yeah.
So like in the twilight, you just like look up and there's all of these eyes kind of leering at you, and I can see how that maybe is like a little disconcerting for sure.
Is that has that been something that you've dealt with besides just that example of people being like, oh, I'm afraid of these, or when they come into your space?
I don't know if it speaks to the types of friendships that I've established, but I feel like a lot of my some of my close friends are also clown people and collect clowns, and they like make clown fetish porn, and they get into stuff like that. So many of my people are clown people specifically, so I think that they're less freaked out. And then I think it's just like speaks to the nature of I'm kind of a silly, whimsical person, so. Like, of course, if you enter Ramona Flour's house, like you would have to stay in a clown guest bedroom or whatever.
Yeah.
It just like kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. To be clear, I don't have a clown phobia. I just like hear people say things about that, which I think is really interesting because I'm like, but I'm not a horror movie person. So I don't watch them. So because I actually am afraid of scary movies. So I just don't do that to myself. So I don't think I have a lot of associations with that like genre.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is your favorite kinds of clowns?
I have a few like really wild, they're like crystal clowns. They're like Russian, like, I don't know, they're really pretty and sparkly and pretty. I also really am obsessed with like clown dolls. So like they're kind of like porcelain doll, but they're clowns. And I sort of like the like worn down kind of older ones that have been like well loved and like have some character, I guess you should say, like have lived quite the life. I've noticed in my like hunting of clowns over the years that a lot of people that collect clowns, they like prize their collections and they don't really want to sell them. So if you see clowns in a store, usually it's like a Salvation Army, and I'll see a whole like lot of them. And I feel like that's like it's like someone, I hate to say it, but I feel like someone's like passed away and like their family has like donated their belongings or whatever. But I feel like a lot of times when I go into like an antique store or something, I'll see like a really good clown and I'll ask them to price it, or I'll ask questions about it. And a huge majority of the time people are like, oh, that's not for sale. Like clown people they're diehards. They don't want to get rid of their clown collection. So I really like the like worn ones. I have a few from like, I've stopped at yard sales and bought people's parents' clowns or grandparents' clowns. Yeah. So it's like generationally in the family, which kind of feels cool. It has like a story attached to it. Yeah. Things like that. Yeah.
What association do you have with clowns? Like what are clowns to you?
I think it's sort of like a esoteric, kind of vibe for me. It's like an allegorical thing. I think like in the Rider Waite tarot deck, you have to be the fool before you can be the magician. So I feel like before you have that genius moment where you make that connection, you oftentimes have that very silly, foolish moment. So it's sort of like that. And I think it's very interesting. Like, I think in conversations about like mental health and neurodiversity, we use the term masking a lot, which I think clowns are very
so interesting.
Similar to that. Like it's, it feels very much like the roles that we play, that kind of thing, as well as like the esoteric meanings of them. There's a lot of like kind of theology based conversations in certain religions about clowns. I read like excerpts of Divine Comedy. So things like that. So kind of all over the place, but in line with some of my other hobbies and interests as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me. I also like I don't know if you follow Caitlin Bailey very closely, but she talks a lot from the Oldest Profession podcast. And she talks a lot about the role of like jester and the role of like prostitutes in old like cultures too, and how those are often like very closely connected, which I didn't think about until you were just talking now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like the jester privilege definitely rings true. So I think originally that's what got me interested as a kid is like, so my uncle's friend would show up to our birthday parties and he would like prank the adults and he would like do silly things. And we as children weren't allowed to engage with the adults around us and, you know, and be up to our little tricks or whatever the way that he could. And he was engaging the adults in a very funny, goofy way. And I was sort of drawn to that, but that like jester privilege of being able to like kind of like do silly things and get away with it is right. I don't know. It's fun to think about
with people in positions of power too. I mean, that's what part of it is. And that's like actually really interesting. I think this point that you bring up about like neurodivergence is interesting as well, because people do talk a lot about like masking and what that is. And I'm trying to like think through what you're saying, because, and I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this, because I think it's a really interesting point. Do you feel like the clown mask then is like how a lot of neurodivergent people feel when they're forced to interact in a way that's not natural to them?
I think so, because I mean, the amount of emotional labor and energy that it takes to command yourself to sort of hit that mark and show up in a certain way, and it requires a lot of, you know, strategy and looking to understanding cues and picking up things that maybe you necessarily are not as intuitively able to do. Definitely feels like that. So
like a role that you have to play.
Yeah, I always call it hitting my mark. I'm like, I can hit any mark. I just need enough emotional energy.
Just tell me what it is, then I'll try to figure out how to get to it. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you feel like there's a way then that you like in your own like person or in your work persona or in your life that you like identify strongly with like the clown?
I think so. I think I definitely have like a level of jester privilege. And I mean, there are moments where I have like I'll be doing my makeup and I'm just like, this is just like literally so silly that I'm literally painting my face. Maybe not like a clown makeup face, although I do that too. But you know, there are those moments where like my brain does have those connections where it feels quite eerily similar. So yeah, it's definitely something that feels in line and in tune with kind of my lifestyle and what I'm doing.
Yeah. Is there a way that makes it fun for you? Like, because actually I've heard you talk about the fact that you have like very, very long skincare routines or very many parts of your skincare routine and things like that. Do you think that like connecting it somehow with like this idea of like the frivolity of the clown, like helps you to enjoy it as well?
Yeah, I think there's some sort of like,
turn it into play.
Yeah, there's some sort of magic in sort of romanticizing and ritualizing things that feel really mundane. And I think a really good way for me to not like loathe and resent kind of doing like a beauty tradition or feeling like I have to do this like 2 or 3 hour beauty routine or whatever is kind of thinking about it in this romantic way or this fun, playful way. Like it's funny how like as kids, we call it like playing dress up, and it's literally this like thing that we do for fun. And then as like older women, like you're like trying to go to the office and you're like trying to do your hair and put on the right outfit, and you sort of loathe it and you sort of resent it. And you just kind of feel like, why can't I just like roll out of bed and, do it whatever. So I think that there is something to be said for sort of like making it this like playful, fun thing. It's sort of like how I guess brain hack myself into taking on all this extra work. And to feel good about it. Cause I don't feel, like I'm kind of very high femme. So I'm really into like the hair and the makeup and the nails and the outfits and, style and the aesthetics of things. But that's definitely like an active thing in my mind, is like sort of making it this ritual and making it this thing that's enjoyable. Like I like having a cup of tea when I do my makeup, or listening to a podcast, or having a book playing, or like I have a whole little routine to kind of get myself into the groove of doing it. And it's like, to have that, extra time, and to maximize my time is really nice for me.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I don't know if you know Rachel Angeli, but she wrote a book called Rust Belt Femme. She's a friend of mine. And she talks about being a high femme in Ohio. And one of the things that she says that I thought that has always stuck in my head in her book was she talked about the routine and the ritual of becoming high femme, or doing all of the things, the hair and the makeup and the clothes and everything. She talked about it as unalienated labor from like this Marxist perspective. And I thought that was really interesting, because obviously you cannot talk about the hours that goes into that without recognizing that it's labor. But what she was trying to point out was like the joy of that labor, because it is for like oneself and one's own like aesthetic. And I always thought that was like really interesting. And I like hearing you talk about the ritual that you do to get into all of that.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I read this book years ago. It's called Glamour Magic. It's by, trying to think of her name, Deborah Castellano. And she talks about like a lot of different beauty traditions around, like glamour magic, and traditionally how like lots of women utilize these like rituals and beauty tradition to like access power and to stay safe and to like move about the world, and how like a lot of it has to do with like the ritual of it. But I think at the root of it, it's like utilizing beauty tradition, but like in a way that feels like empowering or feels beneficial, and sort of like being a little bit more mindful about it. So like instead of resenting like, oh, I'm putting lipstick on, it's like I'm putting lipstick on because I get to wield power in a way.
Right.
And that book was like a kind of a moment where I had like a mind shift. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to so I have 3 sisters and a mom, and I am the most high femme out of all of them. And my sisters were saying, we were on this thread, all of us together, and every one of them was saying, oh, it's like such a drudgery to like blow my hair out, or to do like whatever it is I need to do at the beginning of the day. And most of the time I don't do it, and blah, blah, blah. And I was realizing that like, I mean, there's days that I don't feel like doing all of that, obviously, but like I was realizing that I don't think about it in that way at all. It's like part of the way that I like show up in the world. It's like I need to drink my coffee in the morning and take a shower and do my makeup in the way that I like to do my makeup, and go through that whole routine. And that like going through that routine actually, in the way that you're talking about, does make me feel like, okay, now I'm ready to like go out into the world and do my thing. And it's not because I'm insecure without it, like in the way that I think a lot of people want to talk about high femmes, but that like it is like I take more pleasure in myself when I do that.
Yeah, it's like romanticizing myself. And, I have to look at myself more than I think most people do, right? Like every glimpse of myself I have. So it's not, and I think that like, I know there's that like very anecdotal, silly, like beauty comes from within, but I do feel like it's not if you look beautiful, it's if you feel beautiful. And if you feel
Right.
beautiful and you feel powerful and you feel like you have this relationship or this proximity with beauty,
Yeah.
it's not like you're saying, it's not from a place of insecurity. It's just it's from a different a different intention, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also think like, I think about that in terms of like plastic surgery too. I think that like there's a way that a lot of this stuff, plastic surgery or skincare routines or makeup or any of the things like that or tattoos for that matter, like any of the things that we do to augment the way that we look. I think that there's in our culture a lot of pushback against that. And it seems to me like what you're saying that is so powerful is, and like the book that you read too, is that we can claim those things as like part of our power and not as some sort of defeat.
Yeah, I feel like I see a narrative a lot that like the aesthetics of things are like this sort of frivolous, like privileged thing. And I think that like when you look at history and like I live in New York, so I go to the Met at least once a year, and I look at all of these like beautifully carved like marble sculptures of people, I sort of realize that like this quest for aesthetics and beauty is long going. And I don't think that it's frivolous. I think that like, if anything, if that's what gives you like the urge to like keep on living, like I think it is quite a noble pursuit. So I think it's really funny, like when we have this idea that like art or aesthetics or beauty are kind of these frivolous things, because I think they like inspire like really powerful, really big things. So I don't really subscribe to that idea.
No, I don't subscribe to that either. But actually, it's interesting that you're using the word frivolity, because I recently read Jack Halberstam's book, The Queer Art of Failure. And one of the things that he says that I think is really interesting is that like we have this idea of like frivolity or as being some sort of failure or as being unimportant in like, and what they say is that like one of the things that like queerness does and I'm kind of tying high femme aesthetics into this too, like in this conversation, one of the things that queerness does is like allow for some sort of like both like failure in a conventional capitalist way, but also like frivolous joy that stands against like the norms of the popular culture, and I kind of love that too.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's right on point.
Yeah, that actually frivolity is something that we can embrace in a way that makes life worth living, that we don't have to be so serious about everything all the time.
Yeah,
and beauty can be one of those things.
Yeah. I think that like ties in the clowns too. Like things are.
Thank you for listening to When We're Not Hustling. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Doing so will help other people find us. And if you're a sex worker who wants to come on the show and talk about your life outside of work, we would love to have you. Please send an email with more information to nothustlingpod@proton.me.
Things can be so serious and so heavy and so dark. And I think that like to kind of cut through that and have like a very silly, whimsical attachment to something that's maybe perceived as like very childish is actually quite mature in a way, like to, nurture that part of myself and try to have that, my little candle of hope that no one can blow out, which is my cabinet of clowns.
Yeah. No, I love that, because I feel like, especially now, but I mean, we keep saying that. We keep saying like now in these times when everything is so bleak and they just keep getting like more and more bleak, but that there is this sort of pushback against, I don't know. I saw this a lot on sex work Twitter where people were saying things like, all of these things are going on in world history and you guys are still promoting your business, or you're still putting up like selfies, or you're still doing this. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. You should be doing other things. And part of me, like I understand the need I understand why people want to take a stand. And I think that's super important. But I also like think about what sort of political, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. I also wonder what kind of resistance like finding joy in our lives is too. Like there's a power in that as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I don't know, like the world keeps spinning, the sun's always going to come up. So like at the end of the day, like I think centering joy and centering pleasure and beauty is actually quite important. It's quite radical and revolutionary, especially in a world like, you know, there's a time and a place, and we can't all like literally always be serious. There has to be like a little comic relief, or we'll all go a little too cuckoo. So
which is what a clown provides, right? Yeah, a little comic relief. That's actually something that that does not come naturally to me because I'm a relatively serious person. And I love the kind of reminder that you're providing of like, we can also like do frivolous, you know, and fun things in our lives and can find joy in silliness.
Yeah, I think it's important. Like there's that like saying that's like laughter is the best medicine. And I think that that's really like holds true. And I think that's like why comedy at the root of it is this thing that like, regardless of the genre or the type of person, like I think a lot of people gravitate towards. And it's like quite important. And it's interesting you're saying that you're a more serious person, because I feel like my childhood, I was sort of like an only child and very reserved and very, very serious, and like very much in a situation where I was expected to regulate myself and conduct myself in the way that we would, you know, ask adults. So in my older age, I've kind of like reverse aged and found sillier hobbies and more childlike things to like enjoy, because I feel like as an adult, I get to be like more playful and less serious. So I've kind of like reclaimed some of that for myself.
Yeah, I think that's so neat and so important. Yeah, I'm an oldest child and also had to play like kind of a adult role, almost like a co-parent role with my mom to like my other siblings, you know, so very, very young, I was expected to act like an adult and come home from school and kind of run the show at home. And I think that, you know, a lot of the like personal work that I've been doing, although I'm like bad at it, I'm not very good at it, is like trying to figure out how to reclaim some of that. But reclaiming assumes, and this I think is where I get caught up, is like reclaiming assumes that existed somewhere. And like, I'm trying to tap into something that I've never experienced, which is harder. But I love this like conversation because it does like give me a kind of motivation to think about like, what could that look like? Yeah.
Yeah. You got to embrace the silly.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think it's done for you? Like being able to embrace the silly and collect your clowns?
It's just like a breath of fresh air. Like you were saying, like we're, politics, the world, everything feels like, you know, I go on Twitter and it's just a barrage of like just really heavy topics and lots of discourse and lots of interpersonal things. And it's nice to have something that I can like task myself with. I feel like being a collector kind of feels like the ultimate treasure hunt or like puzzle, because you're always trying to like find things and like plug yourself in to places. And it can be like, it's like the long-term dopamine of having this like amassed collection of clowns, but then there's like the more instant gratification of like finding them and enjoying that process. And just like enjoying the process and the hunt and seeing all of the other things that I probably wouldn't have seen if I wasn't on this silly little goose chase along the way. And just like learning things about, you know, different genres of other treasures, or also just like meeting other people that like collect treasures and have their own little collections. And I'm like, I this is my silly little thing. And then they want to share theirs. So that's kind of fun to think about.
Turns life into kind of a little adventure in a way that it wouldn't be otherwise, huh?
Yeah, which I think like helps, it helps take a little bit of the burden of living off. If you have some like
Mhm.
fun little stuff zhuzhed in there, then
Yeah.
it kind of makes the mundane and the like the heavy stuff feel a little lighter,
Mhm, mhm.
which I think is important to kind of keep in perspective. And like we can know that, but it's a different thing day to day to feel it or to enact it. So, and then I'm
Yeah.
also now dragging everybody else into my silly little clown world because they're finding them and thinking about them too, which I feel like
Yeah,
is
right.
it's like having a positive impact on other people around me indirectly, which I love.
Right. I was just thinking of something that's going to sound kind of dumb, but like, I mean, and you live in the city, so this might seem totally irrelevant to you, but like when you start looking for a car and you're like, oh, I like, cause you're going to buy a car or something. And you're like, oh, I really like that. I've never seen that before. And then suddenly you see like a million of them because you're like, your radar is now like, I never noticed that so many people drive this particular kind of car that like, I suddenly like, or anything. Suddenly becoming aware of something changes the perspective of like what you see in the world. And I'm thinking that taking all of these like people on your little adventure, because I'm even thinking that after I get done talking to you, I will notice clowns in a way that like I totally didn't before, and so
Mhm.
there's a way that not only are you like getting people to you're actually like literally making the world sillier for them because they're going to like see things that they did not see that were there before, but they weren't honed into.
I love that. Yeah, I want my legacy to be when people think of clowns, I think of me. Like, I love
Yeah.
that.
That's
My
not a bad
aspirations.
legacy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said that you're also into other things like I know you read a lot, like and theology, and you kind of brought this up a little bit earlier in relationship to the clowns. Like, how do you feel like those things like intersect, or do they feel like very separate to you?
I think they intersect. I think like it's sort of like once you get into treasure hunting, you kind of go to the same places and you see a lot of the same things. Like I see a lot
Hmm.
of vintage books. I got really into collecting like vintage erotica because I feel
Oh,
like
wow.
I don't know, there's definitely like a demographic crossover between like clown people and porn people or people like I don't
Mhm.
know, like
So
a lot
interesting.
of
Uh-huh.
a lot of the spaces that are like flea market, thrift store,
Hmm.
second hand store. It's a lot of like geriatric old guys, and the old guys, they love their print porn. So like they're I'm it's like the icebreaker is the clowns, and then I'm like, oh, do you got any vintage porn? And then they're like, okay, like this weird clown girl can probably handle my weird box of like fetish porn from the 1950s or something. So then
Hmm.
they start pulling out the porn magazines or whatever.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, you
so
started collecting like vintage porn too, didn't you? Don't you have a lot of old what do you have
yeah.
actually?
So I specifically collect like 1930s to 1980s print erotica. So like
Hmm.
Playboy, Hustler, Penthouse. But I'm really interested in collecting like the more obscure stuff. We have
Hmm.
like a lot of, I mean, we talk about it all the time in the adult industry, like the obscenity laws and the content
Yeah,
restrictions, but like
right.
pre-internet, pre even like mailing pornography, a lot of the old fetish stuff that you find is so much crazier than you could ever find on the internet. It's so juicy. And I don't think we'll ever see that kind of content getting produced or distributed in the way that we used to. So I always feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's such a good treasure, not only for like our industry and like history, but just to see like what were people up to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
before the internet, and they were having a really really good time. So to collect that kind of stuff, I love like the fetish stuff. I also just like love coming at it from the sense of like fashion, so to see
Hmm.
like the production value of like the hairstyles and the stockings and the lingerie
Hmm. Hmm.
and like the sets and everything, like this is before we Photoshop things or had iPhones, or so
Yeah,
like photography was like this very serious thing that like you had to have a lot of equipment and like manpower to like kind of do. So I think it's really
right.
impressive from like an art standpoint and a production standpoint. It really inspires a lot of like the stuff that I consume and like appreciate it. Like I gives you
Yeah, yeah.
another level of appreciation because I don't think we're ever going to make it like we used to.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I was during AVN, at the same time this year, UNLV launched this erotic economies archive. Did you see this?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was on a panel with Lotus Lane at the opening of it, and several other folks. And it was really, really interesting because what they're trying to do is something really similar to what you're talking about, is take pornography and erotic content, especially like older erotic content, really seriously, especially especially in Vegas, where that's so much a part of like their economy. But had tons of stuff donated that is really amazing, like all this old print media and images and all kinds of things. And it's neat to me to see that like universities are housing that stuff.
Yeah. And like really taking the time to like curate it and keep it safe too. Cause I feel like the further out from kind of the original content being made, the harder it is to find, good stuff. And then also the condition matters too.
Right. And to have it in like one place that if people like you or other people are interested, like where can I go and see what things look like, for your own personal collection, but also like just to see what other people's stuff looks like. It's neat that it's being like housed. Do you share your like collection of your porn stuff with people? What do you do with it?
I do have some of it that I like will share. I also make art with some of it. So like I grade my collection. Some of the stuff that's like really in bad shape gets like broken down, and I do like decoupage kind of things.
Oh, neat.
So I've made a few larger pieces of furniture. I've exhibited them. I've sold some of them. And then I really like scanning stuff and like posting it. I mean, not so much like on Instagram and stuff, but like sharing it. And then also like if anyone comes to my house, like that's like one of my fun little things is to like go through my collection, or we'll pull ideas and have conversations about I get a lot of my inspiration from that kind of stuff. So I'm always like, if I have a friend that's interested in some things, I'll pull things for them to look at, and like resources and stuff. I would love to like somehow make it more available to more people, but it's hard because a lot of the really, really juicy stuff, I think the internet would delete me over.
Which is really a shame. Like that is really a shame. And I feel like that's getting more and more draconian. Like there's less, and the variety of things that we see online is getting smaller and smaller, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you consider yourself an artist?
It's funny because I like wince a little like calling myself an artist, but I feel like definitely because I actively like create things in multiple mediums, and I'm constantly inspired by art. And I think like indirectly, like the things that inspire me in photography are not just like looking at Instagram and looking at other photographers. Like I get a lot of inspiration from just like different places. And then I'm able to kind of distill that into the process in which that I like make things, or I find inspiration. So it's kind of like all of my silly little hobbies kind of, are integrated into it in the process. But yeah, I would say I'm an artist.
Yeah. So I like to end every episode asking 3 questions. So the first one is, what are you reading?
So I'm reading Sex and the Constitution. It's like this kind of like long-winded book, but it's like really interesting. It's a lot about like the, obscenity laws and legislation and politics that went into our Constitution and our relationship with sex. It goes into like the history of like pre-Americas, as far as like the Greeks and the Romans, and then the British Empire and all these different things. And it goes into like queerness and gender dynamics. It's quite interesting. It's giving me a lot of interesting things to think about is related to our industry.
Yeah. And what are you listening to?
So what am I listening to? I haven't really been listening to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of books on tape, but I've taken a break. So if I'm not like reading, sometimes I'll just put like ambient music on. I've been getting into acid jazz. So just like
I have never heard of that as a genre.
It's like fun. But like really getting into acid jazz as like my ambient chill out music. And then I guess listening or watching, I've been really getting into like vintage classical films. So I have a lot of older clients that, you know, like they'll make these references of like the old Hollywood starlets. And I was like, well, I guess I know who like Rita Hayworth is, or like Marilyn, or Audrey Hepburn, but like I had never seen their movies, or I had never seen, like, I've been going down the rabbit hole of like, you know, understanding like what was the number one movie that made Joan Crawford, or I watched Straight Jacket over the weekend. So like getting really into like old Hollywood movies.
Yeah, that's fun. I actually think that one of the fun things about this job is I like that. I also have a lot of older clients who talk to me about totally different things that I wouldn't talk to with my peers about. It's fun.
Yeah. It gives me a broader like perspective of the world and makes me appreciate things a little bit more. And it's fun to see like the original references, because I'll watch something and then I like realize like, oh wow, like this really this kind of iconic thing really informed a lot of other things that I like. So going to the original source and seeing how other creatives and other artists find inspiration, it like does something for me. It kind of gives me, you know, I feel like I'm kind of like going down this like goose chase of finding inspiration to distill for my own creative adventures. And seeing that pattern in things that I consume from other people that I look up to or other creatives gives me that like sense of like, okay, we're on the right track. Like this is, we're doing the right work, which feels good.
Yeah. PJ is on a kick of like listening to all these old like radio noir, like detective shows and watching movies from that genre too. So I've got like sucked into some of them, and it's really interesting. It's interesting how things are depicted in like the 40s that is different than now. And sometimes it's more progressive then, which is really interesting.
No, that's been my experience with reading the book Sex and the Constitution. It's kind of realizing like a lot of these cultural like problems that we have are really only things that we've been dealing with in the last 500 to 1,000 to 2,000 years. Like previously, before we kind of mucked it up, like things were not this messed up.
Christianity really did a number on us.
which gives me hope that maybe like we can go through the tunnel to the other side. I don't know. Maybe not in my lifetime, but someday, somewhere.
Sometime. Yeah. And what are you excited about?
I'm really excited for it to be not winter in New York. We had our first 60-degree days, so I'm ready for the sunshine and to spend more time outside and to have my little garden going and to go on hikes and to just like enjoy the outside, because I've been cooped up all winter. So I'm kind of like really having cabin fever right now. So definitely ready for that.
And if people want to find you, where could they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ramona Explains.
Okay. And anywhere else? No, just Ramona Explains. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was fun to chat with you about my little silly little interest.
No, but it wasn't silly though. And that was the thing. I mean, silly as in fun, but it was actually really interesting. Like what you were saying about clowns and how you tied that in with like makeup and neurodivergence and spirituality and history. All of that is really, really interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I hope the takeaway is to center joy and the silliness, because it's actually quite important for us. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to end.
It's the homework for everyone, I hope.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. You can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual or visit my website at jessiesage.com. The show was produced by Emily Foster. The music is by Benjamin J. Benamati. Our intern is Anna Fisher. You can follow us on socials on Instagram and Twitter at Not Hustling Pod. Signing off. Have a great week.